Hello, all you people out there in listening land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, and we are here. We are your host. I am Tim, and we are with
David, I'm here. Yep.
and we are really pumped for today's episode because
Yes.
we both have a few little ties to this film. Would you like to tell us a bit of the history on it, David? Or you know what? Maybe we should get to know each other a little bit first.
Sure, why not? How's it been going, Tim?
One of these days we'll have a structure now. Everything's great. I've had a great week. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. I've been doing a lot of lighting design for a bunch of different groups and people and shows and everything. So I'm learning some new lighting software, and that's what I've been doing most of this week. So it's been kind of fun to learn a new system and frustrating at the same time, but cool because you can see all the results.
Yeah, yeah. All the pros and cons with computer technology.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
They're an abundance going either direction. I have a little thing I saw the other night that you won't be very impressed with, but that I was.
Huh?
I was watching, I think it was the season finale of The Walking Dead, which I mentioned in the last episode. But they had a commercial for Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Oh,
Have you seen
no. No, I missed it. Darn, shucks.
Well, not only has it got the big bad new Godzilla that was in the film a few years back, but it's got like Ghidorah and Mothra and a whole bunch of other monsters.
Is this being made in America or Japan? Or I mean, is this a
No, it's definitely American, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure it's the same people that did the Godzilla remake a few years back that was so well received.
okay? Sure.
So I haven't done a lot of research. I was just really I thought the commercial kicked ass.
Really? Well,
Yeah, I mean, it's big monsters trampling humanity.
yeah, yeah. I've never been a big Godzilla fan.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they do the same thing that they did with him in the original incarnations, where, he starts off as a big baddie, but then he becomes like, a superhero because we need him to defeat other monsters.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So,
every time I think of Godzilla, I just think of you and Steve watching like matinee stinkers and stuff like that, and watching old
yeah.
VHS tapes, of Godzilla versus whoever, Mechalodon or whomever.
Everybody run!
Yeah.
It's Godzilla!
Because you're a no, 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 no,
Oh man, I love those movies.
no.
I just wish me and Steve had like the costumes so that we could,
Stomp
dress up
around on
like the
things.
guys and yeah,
Yeah.
and fight each other. And other than that, I'm watching season 2 of Channel Zero. I think I told you the first
Uh-huh.
season was it's an anthology series. First season was called Candle Cove. I thought it was pretty good. Second season is called the Dead End House or near. I think it's Near End House,
Mm.
and I've only seen 2 of it, and it's pretty bizarre.
Okay.
Um, so, you
Interesting.
watching anything?
No, not really. Haven't watched anything this week of note. I mean, everybody's in trailer city now because of everything that's coming out, in the next couple of weeks. It's big for everything, so television and film. So, but I haven't really been watching anything. I've been, like I said, consumed with lighting software. Yay.
Oh yeah,
So yeah,
yay.
that's been about it. But I did watch
Well,
for like I don't know how many at the time the film we're going to discuss today. So yeah,
yeah, I can't count that either. I've seen it 100 times at least, I
yeah,
would say.
yeah. So for those of you dear listeners who are listening, we are going to be covering a really I think groundbreaking horror film today. Not just in the genre itself, but also groundbreaking literally in our hometown of Morristown, Tennessee.
Yeah.
We're going to be covering The Evil Dead, Sam Raimi's opus to zombies and demons and the woods and lots of other scary, gross, disgusting stuff. So, and like Tim said at the beginning, both of us have unique ties to this movie because it was, as we said, filmed in our hometown when we were both younger. I looked at it, Tim, and I went, it was filmed in 1979. Oh my gosh, this is the 40th anniversary of The Evil Dead.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. So it's definitely going to date us. People can
a
go,
little bit.
how old were they when they filmed? What? Okay, I get it now. But
You're only as
yes,
old as you
the
feel,
correct.
and I feel like shit. No, sorry, I couldn't resist.
The movie, for those of you who have been, hidden in your cellars or your basements forever, basically the storyline is extremely simple. It is five students who are going to a remote cabin in the woods. Sound familiar? Lots of keys just in the description.
Right,
And they stumble upon a book bound in human flesh and inked in blood, and a tape recorder. And by playing the tape recorder, they end up summoning demons that end up inhabiting all but one of them. And it's basically their fight for life over one single solitary night. Does that basically sum it up pretty good for you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a simple premise. You mentioned it was filmed in '79. Wasn't released till '81. I
Yes.
remember we had to wait a long time for it after they went away.
Yes.
But
Definitely.
yeah,
When was the first time you saw it?
I saw the premiere in
In Morristown.
Morristown,
Okay.
not the one in Detroit that came prior.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I saw this. I think I saw the second showing. I don't think I could get into the first showing.
And I did not see that showing. I don't know. I was in college at the time and just didn't get back to Morristown, I think, for that particular night. But like Sam, Bruce, Ellen, all of them came into town, right, for that premiere?
I do remember Bruce and Ellen. I don't remember Sam, but then again, I wouldn't have known who he was at the time,
Oh,
probably
okay.
anyway.
Okay.
I do remember there was a helicopter there. It was like they were trying to make a big show. It was either, I'm pretty sure there was a helicopter and like one of those giant, Batman floodlight things
Mm-hmm.
shining up at the sky or whatever.
Okay.
But it was at the Capri Cinema. I mean, we had three movie theaters in Morristown, and two were like standalones, but no, they had to premiere it at the Capri, which is on the tail end of a strip center at Sky City. I just remember, why did they pick that one,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
instead of the Princess or the Volunteer Twin.
Right.
But whatever.
Right.
And I do remember waiting to get in and hearing people just screaming
Hmm.
inside the theater
Hmm.
as the movie was, coming to an end, a climax.
Yeah, I think it took me a
So,
few months later and I saw it. I saw it in a packed theater. It was very popular. It was, yeah, again, lots of screaming and very well received among, I think, everybody there. And then, of course, naturally watched it several times on VHS, which really I think was I read somewhere during the research that at one point it was the most stolen VHS tape in the country because people who rented it kept stealing them, which makes sense. It was very popular. It developed its own kind of cult mystique. And didn't it have like a bunch of different iterations? I mean, I know they came out with different, not necessarily different versions, but different like marketing of it, right? Because you mentioned you've got one that screams. You've got a DVD that screams or something or whatever.
oh, you're talking about, well, I have DVDs. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as back when it came out on video, I don't know how many incarnations they had. I do know that I saw some documentary the other day about how it was a hugely popular video
Mm-hmm.
and that it was one of the first that England or London seized in the whole video nasty thing in the 1980s
Yes.
because Sam had to go there and defend it.
Yeah, yeah, they had to both. I think
Uh,
both Sam and Rob. I know Sam definitely, but I think Sam and Rob both had to go to England to defend it, which was weird because the other ones listed in the Video Nasty scandal were like snuff movies. I mean, they were really bad and terrible. And Evil
uh,
Dead, I don't think falls into that much of a category. It seems like Hills Have Eyes or Last House on the Left or I spit on your grave.
Toolbox Murders.
Toolbox,
Toolbox
yeah.
Murders was another one. I remember seeing pictures. I can't remember if those other two were in there or
Yeah,
not.
it seems like all
But
those would have fallen into that before you have Evil Dead. But,
I mean, I think it's the gore. I think it's just the gore. There's a lot of gore in that movie.
well, and I've said, I think you've heard me in the past say my take on Evil Dead in general, from a production value, special effects, gore, storytelling, lighting, everything is it's like the JC haunted house of horror movies. I mean, you know the scares are coming. You know where they're coming from. Some of that because so much of it has been keyed or repeated or imitated, kind of thing, but
Mhm.
also because the timing and the way Sam edited stuff and did stuff was just at times very, very predictable, but it still scared you when it happened. The one that I always remember as an example is like, Scotty goes down into the cellar with the only flashlight we brought with us to a cabin in the woods. There's all that suspense of, he doesn't say anything once he goes down. And they say, Scotty, Scotty, come on. Oh, quit kidding around. Come on, Scotty, come back up. No answer. So finally, Bruce goes down, says, give me a lantern. He goes down, has that one last, furtive look back up at the girls standing at the top of the trapdoor.
All three of them in silhouette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Scotty's going to jump out and go boo. But it
Mm.
takes forever. It goes on so long that you start doubting yourself and going, well, maybe not. I guess maybe he's not. Oh, there he is. Yeah, okay, great, great. So even though the scares are coming, even though the gore looks almost too gory and too fake, it still scares you.
Hmm.
Did the movie scare you the first time you saw it? Was it scary for you?
Yeah, it's really hard to remember. I would say yes, because I have an affinity for this movie. I wrote down under my origins and history in my notes that this movie is in my DNA. Um,
Okay.
I think the reason why I like this one and I prefer it over the sequels, include Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, is because even though there's some funny moments and over the top gore in it, it is still a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
can't say that of the other incarnations. The other incarnations are like a comedy and maybe an action period piece. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't disrespect Sam for taking it where he wanted to go, but I just like the horror movie beginnings. And I mean, one of the best things I read about it recently was that this was a movie made by people that love horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And and he references, and this is a bit of a key, Hills Have Eyes. There's a torn poster of it in the
Mm-hmm.
basement. That's a little bit of an in joke that you can tell later if you know. And he references Texas Chainsaw Massacre by having all that crazy crap hanging around down there. Like
Oh, in the
that's
shed.
directly from.
In the shed, all
Hmm.
the bones and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I think both of those
Right,
are
right, right.
keys.
It's the shed, not the basement. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's probably why I relate so much to it, is the fact that it's a horror movie more than a comedy. Although it is really funny in places.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
but
just over the top.
it's yeah, in several ways. And I think that's why it was noticed. I think that's uh, what I like about it, and I've always said is, well, for several reasons. One, it was done by people that you could tell just had a passion for it. They just wanted to do a movie so badly. And there's lots of, I think, brilliant creativity in it.
Mhm.
And a lot of
Yeah.
that, as I've said, I've said in this podcast before, and I've said to you for years and everything else, a lot of it being that they didn't have a lot of money. And I think when you don't have a lot of money, you become more inventive. You create new things. You look at things new ways and say, well, I can't just do it this way, so I have to figure out a different way to do it. And you get more creative, in my opinion, that way. And also for me, I spent a lot of time with Sam when we were shooting this, and he was an idol of mine. He was like a year older than me, and was doing the thing I wanted to do because I was the same way as him. Wynn, Steve Rowe, all of us, we'd been making short films forever and forever when we were in high school. Little Super 8s and some with sound, some without sound, all of that, and continue to do it after that. But Sam took that passion and literally ended up doing it.
Hmm.
Something that I always, so much so that Wynn and I, after in the mid '80s, after the movie had come out and everything else, we actually wrote a screenplay based on all of our adventures while filming Evil Dead.
Oh
And the
yeah.
two lead characters are Sam and Rob in it, and they're taken almost literally from Sam and Rob and their personalities and everything else. So it was a very personal, if it's grounded in your DNA, it's definitely, I think, in mine too. Just from Sam was doing what I wanted to do, and doing it really well.
Hmm.
So, and I have lots of memories of that set and everything else. And some of it I think are, because it's been 40 years, but some of it are actual memories. Some of it I think are shared stories because we would watch rushes every week and everything, and then they would talk about how hard that scene was to shoot while we were watching the rushes. So some of it is I wasn't literally on the set for that, but I saw all the outtakes before anybody saw outtakes. So I saw all the rushes before it was all edited and all that. And others just so some of the things I was there when they happened, and some of the things I was told they happened while I was there. If that makes sense.
Hmm. I feel close to it too because of proximity. You mentioned Steve
Yeah.
Rowe earlier. I mean, Steve and I both lived around the corner. I mean, literally less than a half a mile from where they filmed. And so, like when I rewatched it again for the millionth time the other night, that scene where the car turns off the road and goes into that like grassy embankment.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I used to drive past that all the time. I know it doesn't look like that now because I think the last time I went by there, it didn't. It was barely recognizable. But
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean,
Heavily
for
overgrown now.
years it looked like that. I mean, you saw that little driveway. And didn't
Yep.
Wendell's family own that property?
Yeah, I mean, so for backstory for everybody,
Yeah.
so Sam and Bruce were friends in high school. They'd done all these movies together. They met Rob in college. They all started making short films together and actually being able to show them at the college auditorium because since they were students in Michigan State, they could get discounts on the auditorium. So they would show these movies, and most of them were comedies, some were dramas. There were a couple of suspense ones. But they realized that the movies that they were making were better than all the stuff they were seeing at drive-ins and all around, so why don't they make a movie themselves? So they made another lengthier short, it's about 30 to 35 minutes, called Within the Woods. They shot it on 16 millimeter and edited it all together, and it starred Bruce and starred Ellen, and basically used it as a fundraiser. So they took it around all these doctors and all these people and everybody else and said, "Hey, this is what we made for X number of $4,000. We need 90 in order to do a movie." And they ended up getting the money from all these local investors and everything else. And it took them time to do that. It took them a year or so to raise all the money. By the time they had raised it all, it was winter. And their movie was supposed to start shooting, and it was supposed to be set in the summer in a cabin in the woods. And it was supposed to be all of the reports were that Michigan was going to have one of the worst winters it's ever had ever. So they started looking for places in the South where they could all travel to and find a cabin that would work. The Tennessee Film Commission at that time was really, really big on we need more movies because North Carolina was having a big boom with Wilmington and everything else with their film commission. So the Tennessee Film Commission said, "Hey, come on down, we'll find you a place." And they ended up working with a local guy named Gary Holt. And Gary was an aspiring, wanted to be a producer, wanted to be a music producer or a movie producer, something. He wanted to be a producer. That was his guy. But he ended up talking to Pete Thompson, and Pete Thompson was my best friend at that time, Wynn's father. And he had a cabin out in the woods, hadn't used it for years. Nobody had used it, actually. He had just acquired the property because it had gone up for auction and he had bought it and it had a cabin on it with a shed, two sheds actually, kind of a barn place in the back and then a shed on the side. And Wynn's dad was not a farmer; he worked at a college, but he had the properties just as an asset. So he ended up talking with Gary, and they worked out the contract that the Renaissance Pictures, which was Sam and Rob and Bruce's company, that they created with this $90,000, could come down and shoot this horror movie here. And one of his only stipulations was, hey, if you need them, I have, my son and his best friend love to make movies. They'd love to help you. So that's how I got involved.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was very unique. It was a very unique experience, like I said, just because it was so close to me, because it was what I wanted to do. And, I was going to UT at the time, and Wynn was going to UT, and we were both wanted to be film majors and both wanted to make our own movies, and we're going to go away and be little Spielbergs. That was our little dream. And here was a little baby horror Spielberg right in our own hometown making a little movie.
Right.
Oh, look at that. What was your, how did you first find out they were doing the movie? Because you and Steve were literally half a mile away.
Right. I want to say my mom probably showed it to me in the newspaper, in the Citizens Tribune, that they were filming.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I was younger than you. Ha ha ha. So it wasn't like I could just readily go down there. Yeah, I would have been driving by then, or very very
Mm-hmm.
near so. And I don't know. We'd heard these rumors that you couldn't go down there. They've got guns. They'll shoot you or whatever because they're very protective of their privacy. They're making a film, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I distinctly remember laying out of school one day and probably partaking in some illegal substances and
No.
driving there with some friends and walking down there, and no one was there, but everything was set up. You could see the front door and where they had cut the holes out of it, where Cheryl, reaches in and grabs Bruce by the throat.
Mm-hmm.
Up to the left on a slight embankment, there was a grave that had been dug, and it had a wooden, like it was like twigs tied together to form a cross.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how close I came to stealing that thing. And I thought, well, that would have been horrible. Then they would have had to recreate it. And then I noticed on like all of the things I've been watching these past few days, they recreated it more than once, and it didn't ever look the same,
Oh yeah, never.
which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, I would have loved
Yeah.
to have that for a souvenir, for sure. And there was those weird lights they had hanging on up in the corners of the cabin, the big spotlights.
Uh-huh.
And but no one was there. It was because they filmed at night, and I think they slept during the day.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, like my schedule and Wynn's schedule was because we had classes and then we worked at the bookstore at UT in the afternoon. So we would go into class at like, their 7:50s or 8 o'clocks, go to work in the afternoon. As soon as we were off work at 3, we would drive up here and wake everybody up. And because and this is something I've heard because I've heard rumors over the years or seen some documentaries. I didn't watch any documentaries, rewatch them about this, and some of them I've never seen. But I have heard that some people said no, everybody lived at the cabin. No, they didn't. They had a huge
Mhm.
house off Kidwell's Ridge that had like 5 bedrooms in it and everything
Mhm.
else, and that's where they basically stayed. So everybody would crash out there, and at first, they were on a day shoot. Going back for a second, so you going over there, if you saw the holes in the door, then that was probably the last 2 weeks of shooting, because that was in January, because that's when we actually cut those holes.
Mhm.
Before that, it was a full door, of course, and everything. So they came down here from Michigan in November and started shooting, and they were supposed to be here for 6 weeks. All their contracts were going to be up by Christmas. So they're going to come down here, they're going to shoot it in 6 weeks and be done. Naturally, that didn't happen.
Mhm.
Everything was very slow, mostly because they had some issues. Well, they were extremely under budget. It was a very low budget, but also Sam was very particular about what he wanted, and sometimes would, Kubrick it. He would shoot things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and waste entire days trying to get the lighting right and da 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 whatever. But at the beginning, they were all shooting during the day, so everything was because they shot basically is somewhat in order. So the beginning of the shoot was all the stuff with the car and the bridge and all the stuff they shot in Greenville. I think Greenville was where they found the bridge. I was not involved with any of it at that time. Wynn and I didn't start working on the film per se, working voluntarily, haha, because we're
Correct.
fake Shemps. We're fake Shemps. Look at us. Anyway,
Hmm.
but we started that the third week of December. So right after school was out at UT, we started doing that. And they were on the night schedule by then, and we worked until they left. And I think the last day of shooting was like January the 28th or 29th or something like that was the last day. And we worked with them, that entire time. They said that at the beginning, they went back to the house every night or every day. Even when they switched to the night schedule, they'd go back to the house during the day. But then one day they came back and all their tools were stolen. So all of Goody's tools have been stolen, and all of the but whoever stole them didn't take any of the cameras or the microphones or any of the, you know. Somebody said they stole a circular saw but didn't steal the $30,000 camera right beside it. So
That's Tennessee for you.
yeah, unfortunately, so true.
Yeah.
But yes, and they had to film the car stuff and everything at the very beginning because when they first got to the cabin, it wasn't what they wanted. So they had to rebuild a lot.
Apparently it had animals in it or something.
Yeah, the big story is, local farmers had just been using it like their barns, their barn in the winter. So there was cow crap and everything everywhere. And they had to shovel all that out and get it. But then they had to fix it for the way they wanted. And there's some things that are really cool about that. For example, like the original cabin didn't have the two windows in the front. They had to add those. The original cabin did not have the hallway or a kitchen or a bathroom because it had an outhouse. So it didn't have a bathroom, it didn't have a kitchen, didn't have a hallway. All that was added. And you can really tell it when they in the scene with the kitchen because the kitchen is just a yellow tarp. That's all it is. It's just a yellow tarp that they stretched up to use for the kitchen scene with Scotty. For the bathroom scene. And the kitchen is so the original cabin, think of it like an L. It had that whole big front room with the fireplace. And then it had a side room, and the side room is 3 bedrooms, but you went through each bedroom to get to the next one. There was no hallway. So they actually built a small hallway out there where the porch used to be in the original cabin. They kind of framed it in and left it as a hallway and a back door and the kitchen. So Goody and I think Ivan, Sam's brother, and a couple of other guys that all came down with them ended up having to build all of that. And while they were building all that at the cabin and getting it ready and taking out the ceiling and digging the whole trough for the trapdoor and
And
all of
lighting
that.
it. I imagine they had to light it too.
Yeah, they had to wire because they had no wiring, so they had I had to wire it, and like you said, they added great big huge spotlights to the edge of the roofs on each end, and you can see them in certain shots. They're in a big box that kind of hides each light,
Hmm.
but you can see them up there sometimes, and they had to do all of that, and so to save time, Sam and all the cast were filming all of the car stuff, which was all the stuff at the bridge and arriving and the truck and all of that. And then they were finally ready to start shooting at the house. Let's see some other production notes because I've got tons of production
I'm
stuff.
sure. I love the car scene, by the way. I love all the crazy Batman angles that he does just inside the car.
Yeah,
Like when
yeah,
the steering wheel loses control and there's like a shot of a surprised, is it Scotty driving? And like
yes.
Bruce is in one, on one side of him and the girl's on the other side and they're all 3 in frame. I'm like, that's not the way that would happen, but it looks
No,
really cool. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
there's the
yeah.
one with the girl's got her face up against the window.
Oh, yeah, where Shelley, I guess, because
Yeah, Shelly's her name. I can't think of her real name. Yeah. I mean, it's just he was so creative with the camera work. I mean, I'm glad that he was a little Kubrick in his trying for the perfect shots because I think that's what got him noticed. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
clear that the acting is not great and the budget is minimal, but there is some talent behind that camera. I mean,
Oh my
what he's
God, yeah.
doing is phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and I'd read once somewhere somebody said, you can tell when things really get crazy because that's when they start using the Scotch angles or the Batman angles and all that. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, no, they did that from the very beginning. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't. That wasn't after the possession. Sam was doing that in the truck even is like shot sideways, kind of thing. That angle
Right.
kind of coming toward him. So yeah, he was doing it even then. And Rob interviews with Rob where he said, the success of Evil Dead is because of Sam Raimi, and it's true. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
wrote and directed it. It was what he wanted. He had wanted to do a horror movie that was a genuine horror movie, and he was not afraid to experiment. And and I think the girls mentioned this. I'm sure they probably do in a lot of interviews and things, but he wasn't hampered by a lot of restrictions or anything like, oh, I don't know, safety and stuff like that. He could do things that other people wouldn't attempt to do because it was his first movie. He didn't really know any better and wanted to do as much as he could. I mean, I've read, in Fangoria and other stuff, in the decades since then, all kinds of stories of how many people got hurt and how, just little cuts and scrapes, but also just fatigue and tired and all the stuff they put. Poor Bruce. I mean, it was like
I mean,
literal
he
torture porn for
obviously
Bruce.
endured some, and I always feel for Ellen in that scene where she's running through the woods half naked because it can't
Oh
be
yeah,
easy to, and she's barefoot, I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, how can you do? I mean, I couldn't do that. that's that's pretty
yeah.
painful.
Well, she's barefoot in some shots and not in others, just depending on
Okay.
where she had to run. But yeah, I remember we were using because the first thing that I ever, when you watch the movie, the first thing that I ever touched, or one of the first things I ever touched or got to do with, is when they start doing the incantation and you see the ground outside, start swelling up and there's
Red
fog
light.
and red light and everything else.
Hmm.
That was just a trough that we dug, put a board on it, covered it with leaves, put a light in it, and a fog lamp.
Mm.
That's all we did. And you just pushed down on one end of the board, and it came up with the lead, blah blah blah, right? But the board we were using was one of the boards that they had used for Ellen to run through the woods on, and it was like covered in blood. And it was no, I mean not drenched, but there's spatters everywhere, and that's all from just her being cut, her legs being cut and scraped,
Oh,
and everything from running over and over through the woods for all those takes. Ellen. So wait, let's talk about cast. So
okay.
I only got to work with Ellen one day. So the day we started was the day she was leaving. So it was like her last day on set. And then
Oh, so you didn't get any of the cellar shit with her?
no, all of that
Oh
had been
my
shot.
God,
That
that's like
was
my
shot
favorite
first.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
All
you
of her
okay?
stuff, all of her scenes were basically done because, like I said, we started like that third week of December, and that's when the contracts were up, and basically
Okay.
they were leaving, even though
Yeah.
they weren't through yet. But they had some of them came back. So Betsy, who played Linda.
Mm-hmm. And Bruce, of course.
Well, Bruce stayed through
Yeah.
Christmas and New Year's and everything. And Bruce, Rob, Sam, Josh, Goody. But Tom had to leave. The makeup guy had to leave. But he was there another week because I worked with Tom a lot. The first week we worked on set, I worked with Tom naturally because you know how much I love makeup. So I was
Mm-hmm.
working with Tom Sullivan on makeup and stuff. But Rich had to leave, but then he came back. They came back like New Year's Day and worked till like the third, I think, was there. They came in for 3 more days just to do some pickups and stuff. But I never got to work with Shelley, Teresa.
Her name's Teresa Tillman, but she went by Sarah York because she was in
Yes,
SAG and she didn't want to get penalized.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And she did. They found out. She got like banned for 6 months or something, fined or I don't know. She did. I read that somewhere. Her and one other, I think, may have done. Maybe it was Linda. Both were worried about being SAG actors and not, because they were doing this under the radar. It wasn't going to be a SAG production yet.
It was Rich too, because Rich had a different name in the movie.
Maybe that's it then.
Because his name was something I can't remember it right now, but it wasn't Rich. Because his real name it was Rich and had a weird last name like Delmonico or Delman or something.
It's Demanicore, and he was as Hal Delrich.
Yeah, Hal
and
Delrich. Yeah, because
and
that
Teresa
wasn't.
Tilly as Sarah York. So they've got their real, I mean, their pseudonyms in there as well.
Yeah, basically the week that we arrived, most of the cast were leaving. So I only got to work with a few of them. But Bruce was, I mean, what he put up with in general, the whole time, well, all of them. Everybody's talked about it was a hard shoot. It was terrible. Yeah, it was very grueling because they had said it was going to be one of the worst winters Michigan would ever have, but instead Michigan had a very warm winter, and Tennessee got one of the worst winters they've ever had. So it was like 20 and 30 degrees, and they were outside in bathrobes and nightgowns, and the cabin itself had, other than the fireplace, had no heat.
It was very primitive.
Yeah, it was not rigged for plumbing. Like I said, the bathroom was just a total fake set because they had an outhouse. So there's no plumbing anywhere there.
Yeah. We didn't go inside. We when I went there that day,
Hmm.
we were afraid that there might be a crewman or so asleep in there. So we just kind of tiptoed around outside. We didn't want to wake anybody up.
Well, I'm sure Josh was probably there because after they got everything stolen, which happened before, we really started working. It happened like that first week of December. They they always kept somebody there during the day, asleep
Yeah.
there.
Well,
Uh,
and I don't remember. We may have heard about that theft, and that may be why we thought someone would have a gun or something. We didn't want somebody to think we were coming down there to disturb shit. We
oh
were
yeah,
just
no,
curious.
of
Yeah, so
course,
we were really trepidatious about, going down there. It's like, man, these people, they'll kill you because they're trying to make a movie.
yeah, yeah. And then again, so it was very primitive. I mean, and it was very, like I said, not a lot of thought about safety. They did stuff the way they did stuff. Like when Bruce shoots through the window, he shoots through the window.
Hmm.
He's really shooting a shotgun through a glass window. And when trees come crashing through the glass, that's not sugar glass, that's real glass that,
Hmm.
and we have to clean it up and sweep it up and put it back, and all that. But now we have a big hole in the room and there's no heat in here. So it was cold. And in between shots, because Sam shot for, I think, you and I have mentioned it before, but one of in the outtakes, if you look them up, there's one with Ellen in the cellar doing her push up bang on it and blah, blah, whatever.
I'm all right now, Ashley. Come on, not pretend, let me out. I'm all right now. If you think you're
And it goes on for like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and then she ends it with by saying something like, I can't do this anymore, or cut, or
Yeah,
something
I
like
think
that.
it's just her laughing. It's just this really gravelly voice she's laughing with, and then finally
Yeah.
she's like, "I can't do this anymore."
Yeah, yeah. But so imagine while she's doing that and Sam's shooting it, four other people are standing in the background waiting, in a cabin with no running water and no heat. So it's not like you hear about today where I'm going to be in my trailer and
Hmm.
just call me when you're ready for me. And
Yeah.
most of them in latex are covered in K-robe. I mean, it was so sticky in that cabin that we were doing it. We were bringing mud, leaves, using ashes from the fireplace, anything to like sop up all the K-robe so you wouldn't stick as you walked.
And a lot of people don't realize that, she was not standing on the staircase to the basement. She was basically standing in a hole that they
Mm-hmm.
had dug because there was
Yes.
no second or basement floor. There was just dirt. So they
Yeah.
dug a hole and she stood in it like she was in the basement.
Dug a 5 foot hole and cut a hole in the floor and added a staircase, and that was it. Because the basement was filmed months and months later, back in Michigan, all the
Hmm.
basement stuff. But to your point, it had some great stuff to it. I do like, even though it's over the top at times, I did like Tom Sullivan's makeup, and I like some of the stuff he did and the design work he did. Especially some of the more avant-garde stuff. Like I like, the one everybody talks about, the Achilles tendon pencil. That
Yeah.
just is
It
so painful.
it still makes me
It's
squeam. I mean, I'm just like,
yes,
ugh.
yeah. That one, the I think it's Shelley, or it's not Cheryl, Shelley or Linda. Linda gets stabbed, right? She the one that gets stabbed, I think. But later on, when Ash
She's the one that
looks
falls
at
on the
it,
knife, isn't she? Yeah, she's the one that does the
yeah,
really stupid thing where she turns the knife around in her hand so that she can actually be stabbed. It's like so. It's one of the stupidest things in the movie. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
Where she
that's
takes the dagger and turns it around in her hand so that the choreography would allow her to be stabbed. It's so
yeah.
predictable when you see her do it. I'm like, oh, wait, why's she doing that?
Right. Again, it's that JC haunted house of horror films. We know it's coming, kind of thing.
So yeah, it's she does the baby doll, and anything with the sclerotic contact lenses is creepy as hell.
Well, and you know the whole story about those, right?
Yeah, about how they you couldn't wear them for very long because they covered half your eyes and your eyes couldn't get air or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were like, you know what I thought of the first time I saw them was I thought somebody has cut out the very edge of an Easter egg, of one of those plastic Easter eggs. You know what I mean? Because that's the way
Here,
because
put
you
this in
couldn't.
your eye.
Yeah, yeah, and imagine this. So they were. You got particular pairs. So each of the girls had their own kind of thing, and then Rich had his. They cover your entire freaking eye. It's
Hmm.
almost like when we were doing The Exorcist, and we were talking about how it was the same thing, except they didn't have the things going for them. The Exorcist did, so they didn't have any numbing drops or anything else. They just basically, went, put these in your eye. But they're not like the contact lenses today that were like soft. These were like plastic. I mean, they were glass. They were hard, and you couldn't just pop it in your eye. You had like this little funky applicator, plastic suction cup thing. So
Yeah.
you had to like stick it, pull the person's eye back and stick this thing on there, and then pull the suction cup off. And they're doing that with no running water, covered in Cairo blood and latex and
Dirt.
dirt and mud and everything. And here, stick this in your eye. Keep it in there
Yeah.
for half an hour. But to your point, yeah, extremely effective.
They're very effective. And if it weren't for the fact that, you were asking me about my incarnations on DVD, I've got like the 2001 releases that are
Uh-huh.
actually made of latex and to look like the Book of the Dead. I can put a picture of these up somewhere to show people. Then I have the 25th anniversary edition, which has multiple versions and commentaries and stuff.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that with these releases where you're getting great clarity and a widescreen version of the film, you can see the the details in the makeup, even though they might not want to be seen. Like I can see the little lines that are drawn on Cheryl's lips to make them look wrinkled, and you can see that her fingertips are coming out of the latex glove that's her hand
Mm-hmm.
and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the price you pay for, a good print of the movie, but it's still
Well,
effective. I don't
especially
give a
since it
shit.
was shot on 16 to begin with, it wasn't supposed to be that clear, or that was kind of the horror movies at that time were like drive-in, like grindhouse movies. They weren't
Yeah,
supposed
I
to be
watched.
ultra 4D, show every vein in your neck kind of thing. But yeah, I totally agree. You can see where the latex mask stops on their jawline, and then they just
Hmm.
kind of painted black veins on their neck to kind of
Hmm.
blend it. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I still like it.
There was there was no continuity. We didn't take any photos, so nobody took any pictures of makeups to
Hmm.
kind of recreate them day to day. So every day it would just be here.
Well, you would have to take them to the drugstore to get
Yes,
developed.
yeah, or use a Polaroid. You can use a
It's
Polaroid,
not
but
like you
yeah,
could use a camera phone. It's 1980, for Christ's
yeah.
sake.
Well, and that's the thing, it wasn't like they were working in a studio either. So every week, Josh
Right.
or Rob or somebody would have to drive to Knoxville, take the film, send it off to be developed, and pick up the previous 2 weeks ago, because it
Yeah.
takes 2 weeks to process, rushes, and bring them
I guess
back.
you could have used a Polaroid. I
Yeah,
didn't think about a Polaroid. You could,
but bring the rushes
but
back.
yeah, and also I heard that Bruce's eyes used to practically get glued together because the Karo syrup, was so
Oh,
sticky
yeah,
that they had to wipe his eyes off so he could see
yeah. Literally, we
and
would wipe
open
it
them.
off, and
Yeah.
sorry, it doesn't match the previous shot, but he can't physically see. But that was the other thing about the scleratics too, which I wanted to say is the sclera
Mhm.
context. You couldn't see through them, so the girls were blind in all those scenes, and they're just kind of following Sam's voice or here, walk this way, that kind of thing. You couldn't see when you were wearing. Yeah, there was no continuity. There was blood. Everything was sticky. I remember there was one time where Bruce is supposed to throw something. I can't remember. I think it was the gun. He's supposed to drop the gun, or it's like and maybe it's in the door when Cheryl comes through the door and grabs him, and he drops the gun because he's just reloaded it, or whatever.
Mhm.
And he was supposed to drop it, and you could see his hands go out and his fingers go up, but the gun stuck because it was stuck to him with the camera suit. And he's like, "God, I'm sorry, guys, I can't get this off of my hands."
Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, and it was just everywhere.
There's you were talking about continuity and goofs, and there are a million goofs if you look on
Oh my
IMDb.
gosh.
Um, One of the ones that cracks me up, I mean, some of the ones that crack me up are the ones that are just so blatantly obvious, like what I was talking about with Linda turning that knife around in her hand because she knew she was going to have to get stabbed with it in the following scene. The other is when Bruce goes to get, it's like I don't know if it's a phonograph. It's some little piece of furniture. He goes to put it in front of the front door, and there's a window right by the door that's been busted out. That's
Oh yeah,
as big as the
yeah,
door. It's like, why are you blocking the door? They can just walk through that
yeah. She
window.
could just literally walk 4 feet and walk into the room. You know. Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, what the fuck? Oh my gosh, it's so
Well, I
funny.
used to say when I would watch it, I used to say, well, thank God there are no more bookcases in here for somebody to throw Bruce into. Because he literally got
Yes.
thrown into every piece of furniture in the house.
Yeah. And I can remember watching it on video with you or Wendell
Uh-huh.
or both. And like when Scotty is chopping Shelly into
Mm-hmm.
pieces, you told me that you and Wendell were like there with little pixie cups full
Yeah.
of fake blood and throwing it up so that you could see the blood flying up in the
Yeah, the
air in
little
front of the
spouts that are
camera.
coming up or that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last week or 10 days, the lease was up on the house. So for those 10 days or so, maybe even while you were there, I don't know, but for
You're talking about the cast
yeah,
house where they
the
lodged.
cast
Yeah.
house they had to give up. But so for like the last week or 10 days, everybody stayed at the cabin. So that may be where that whole myth came from that they had to stay at the cabin the whole time. But so they may have all been in there asleep when you guys were down there. Uh,
Oh, maybe.
and I know for the last, at the very end, it came down to the wire, literally, with Sam going, we have to be out of here by Friday. We've got to go back to Detroit, kind of thing. And so I think, stayed up. I think it was at least 2, maybe 3 days. We just stayed up and shot all the time. During the day, we would go inside and shoot interior stuff that they had for pickups, whether it's tossing the little necklace or any of that kind of stuff, and then at night we would shoot all the pickups we had to shoot. So all the stuff with Linda, burying Linda, doing all of that, all of Bruce's stuff, and then of course the final shot. That took all frickin' day. We did that like 12 times. It was.
And didn't Barbara Carey sub for Linda
Yeah.
at that time?
Yeah, most of the
And that's
most of the shots of Linda, once he's carried her outside, not when she's laying there and she's faking him out, she opens her eyes and then she closes them when he looks at her, that kind of stuff. But once she scratches him and the fight starts, all the way through the decapitation is Barbara, Dan Carey's cousin, who I was dating at the time.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason she was in it, because they said, we need a girl to do this. And I said, oh, she'll do it, not knowing, she's going to be in a nightgown in 12-degree weather outside being buried alive. Sure, she'll love to do it. But you can really tell, because look for the wig, because the wig is really, really fake on her.
Oh yeah, you can tell at one point she spews the milk shit out too.
Yeah.
But I didn't know Barbara. I know Dan obviously very well. We've known him our whole lives. I saw him at Disney World last year. I ran into him at Hollywood Studios.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were acolytes in church together.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know he had a cousin named Barbara.
Yeah.
Until you told me about her in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I took her to prom. Hey. Anyway.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, because I know Andrea and his little brother Zach, and I know his parents, but I never knew his cousins.
Yeah. Yeah. But so she volunteered, and she's a fake Shemp. She's listed in the credits too, but she basically.
Yeah, she's listed in the credits too.
But yeah, basically all that stuff with Bruce, the ripping up his leg, tearing down his leg, which was really cool. Okay, special effects wise. So we took a mat knife and cut through Bruce's corduroys like scratches, and then put latex over it and tissue paper and like 4 layers, and hair dried it in freezing cold weather to put like an area over it, and then covered all that in mud, and then we did all the blood and the stuff on the inside of it. So she's like reaching up and scratching off this latex. We only got like 2 shots of it, but at the same time, movie magic. Bruce is standing there, and he has a tube going all the way down his pants leg to right above that, and he is taking huge mouthfuls of Cairo syrup and pumping, spewing. That was one of my special effects story, and the other one was we're sitting there. This is like the second day I think I was on set, because I remember it so distinctly, because I'm sitting there with Tom in the back room, which I actually became like his makeup room. That's where all the plaster molds were and everything at the house, not at the cabin, at their house, and we were eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he took a chicken leg bone, and said, "This is going to be great." And I went, "What?" And he goes, "Come on." And we went in the back, and he started making the prosthetic for Scotty for his broken wrist, and that's a Kentucky Fried Chicken bone coming out of his wrist. And that was so cool. I mean, as a kid, to me, I was going, "Oh my gosh, that's genius! You actually took a real bone. You didn't have to sculpt it or do it. It's perfect."
Mm-hmm.
And Scotty in that scene, because he when he came back in January, one of the things he had to shoot was that death scene. The killer ash and all that stuff. And they actually ran a tube, and you can see it in the makeup. He ran a tube from his mouth up his upper lip and into his nose, and then covered it with latex like he was cut and scarred. But we'd give him a little Dixie cup, and he would drink Cairo, and then he would squirt it up into his own nose so it would come out of his nose. That was a little.
That's weird. Yeah, I noticed in a lot of the outtakes that I was watching, people swallowing drinking mouthfuls of the blood so that they could spit it out later. That happened quite frequently.
Yeah, it's a wonder most of them don't have diabetes, because I mean it was Cairo syrup and spread food coloring it. Well, some oatmeal and a couple of times, but that was basically it.
Yeah.
Sam is known for the shaky cam. That was the big deal. I saw one time in Fangoria, they said the very last thing they shot was the first shot, and that is not true.
No, I didn't think
The
so.
first the first shot was shot much earlier, and it was basically Bruce pushing Sam in a boat as he went over the swamp, kind of thing. But he would take a Bolex or an Aeroflex, whichever camera they were using for that shot, and they would mount it to a board. And then he would, if it was like a 2 foot or 3 foot board, he would hold it and like walk with it, run with it, do all those shots. But for some of them, we would make it even a longer board, and that way he's able to do even longer things, like the shot that goes over the grave as Bruce is burying Linda,
Mm-hmm.
and then he picks up the shovel, and then it comes back as he walks towards us and goes back over the grave. I was on the left, Josh was on the right, and Sam was like right behind the camera, trying not to fall in the grave, but trying to look through the viewfinder to do that shot. But creating this whole axis on the center of the board was a really cool idea, since they didn't have like a steady cam or any of that kind of stuff to use.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've got in my notes, I've got several things that impressed me.
Yeah, do those.
I love the entire rape, not just the rape sequence in itself, but the entire sequence of Cheryl in the woods running. I think he
Uh-huh.
just did a really, really good job with that, as far as the
Mm-hmm.
chase and then the stop
The timing, the
animation with
music.
the vines and the timing, yeah, like you said, and the music and the climax, with the shot. I also love the scene where she's scribbling on the tablet, and all of a sudden she
Mm-hmm.
brings the tablet down on her legs, and you see the cellar door just kick open just a little bit in front of her. I mean, it's like just perfect
Mm-hmm.
timing. And I can imagine that took a while to get that down. I can't imagine he did that in one
Mm-hmm.
shot. I was wondering how many times she
Yeah.
drew that, drew that little face on that pad.
Yeah, the little book kind
Hmm.
of thing. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then the cards. Well, one of my favorite scenes is the card scene where she's looking out the window and starts predicting what cards are being drawn.
4 of hearts, 8 of spades, 2 spades, jack of diamonds, jack of clubs. Why have you disturbed our sleep?
And then she
Mm-hmm.
flies up in front of the window, and it's like almost like an exorcist kind of thing, where she's just floating there and starts
Yep.
saying, "You will die one by one. We will take you." And then her head just kind of goes, "Ugh," and she collapses long enough that somebody can get stabbed in the leg with a pencil.
Well, two things in that scene. One, if you notice, the cards have blood on them.
Oh, do they?
If you look back at it when they're doing it, because they'd been sitting around on the
And
floor, and they had already shot some shots with blood, and so they'd just gotten blood on them. Um, and that scene I saw in dailies. I was not there, like I said, with most of Ellen's stuff, but I saw that in dailies, and they kept her in that harness rig a long time. Sam shot that a lot for that, what, 5, 8 second scene, maybe. Maybe it's longer, maybe like 15 or 20 of her doing all those lines
Mm-hmm.
floating.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, because basically it's a magician's rig. It's like a fulcrum back of her. She's in a back brace,
Mm-hmm.
and it just goes out to a wooden board, and they're just pushing on it outside.
Mm-hmm.
But I also saw dailies, and I haven't seen any since. I need to look them up and guess, but I remember, or maybe it's 40 years, maybe I'm losing it, but I remember distinctly seeing dailies where they did that, but it was at that tree outside that had the big hole in it. You see it in the arrival shot, and you see it near the end, and you also see it once when I think Ash looks out the window or something. But there was a tree in the front near where the car parked, and it had a great big huge like knot in it, a hole in the center of it. And they put a board through that and had Ellen outside, levitating and everything else. But I guess they decided, no, we need to have her inside. How's she going to get a pencil outside? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, But I remember seeing that. Maybe it was an experiment to begin with, or maybe they were just doing an experiment earlier. Because it was during the day that I saw in these dailies. I saw her. It was during the day. So maybe they were thinking of something else or whatever. But they kept her, and she and Bruce both were probably the most abused on that set.
I'm sure.
Oh, you bastards! Why are you torturing me like this? Why?
And I mean, if she's in that basement, or well, that hole,
Yeah.
for a very long time, and some of my favorite shots are her in that basement, and some of my favorite lines are hers when she's in that basement.
Mm-hmm.
Soon you'll all be like us. Then who will there be to lock you in a cellar?
Soon all of you will be like me. And then who will lock you up in a cellar?
Yeah.
And then she's, at one point she goes, "It's your sister Cheryl."
I'm all right now, Ashley. Come on, knock his head, let me out. I'm all right now. It's your sister Cheryl.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and there's one scene,
Yeah,
it's
she's
definitely,
got killer lines.
it's a key for me, but there's one scene where when she suddenly gets good and says, Ash, please let me out. I want to get
But
out.
you can't see her.
Right.
Yeah.
You just hear her voice.
The door's closed.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and again, it's that haunted house because you're going, no, don't go over there. No, don't unlock it. No, damn it. No, she's going to, whatever. The key that immediately hit me when I watched it this time was from The Thing, where he goes, I want to come in. I'll be good. I feel much better now. I was going,
Right.
that's Cheryl
Wilford
going,
Brimley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's Cheryl going, I'm all better. Ash, please let me out.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's great.
That one got me. What other scenes did you like? I mean, you love Ellen, I know.
Yeah. She's my absolute favorite. I love the fact, and I'm guessing this is because they had listened to the reel to reel, but I love the fact that Scotty doesn't hesitate to grab that axe and just cut his girlfriend into pieces.
Yeah.
He just goes after her.
Yeah. And what is it? Ash is lying about. We can't bury Cheryl. She's a friend. He's like, she's dead, Ash. What?
Yeah, she's dead. What cracks me up is that they decide they have to bury somebody. It's like, who gives a shit?
Oh yeah. To me, that's one of the things globally that's a key from this is Sam kind of reinvented the demonic possession kind of thing because it wasn't just, stab them in the head like a zombie or silver bullet or burn them. You have to total body dismemberment.
Yeah,
in order
you have to
get
keep
rid
them from being able to get you.
And even then, they still twitch.
Yeah, and this is a key as well, but it's like he took The Exorcist and Dawn of the Dead and just smashed them together because it's a whole reinvention of the zombie genre too.
Yeah, I guess so.
They
Yeah.
talk and they're possessed, but they also will bite and chew on you and do anything they can to kill you.
Yep. I remember other kind of set thing. Well, no, you were saying about things you like.
Well, one of I like the scene where they're listening to the recorder, and I was going to ask
the
you,
voice.
how the hell did they get Bob Dorian to do that?
That I don't know, because
Okay.
it's great. I love
Yeah.
that voice is awesome. His timing is good.
I know now that my wife has become host to a Kandarian demon. I fear that the only way to stop those possessed by the spirits of the book is through the act of bodily dismemberment. I would leave now to avoid this horror, but for myself, I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods, and I have no doubt that whatever I have resurrected through this book is sure to come calling for me.
I mean, I guess Sam just wrote him or called him and said, "Hey, we watch you on American Movie Classics. Would you please record this voice?" Of course, I don't even know if American Movie Classics existed back then. They probably didn't come around till the 80s, late 80s.
Yeah, probably not.
But it's a very recognizable voice. It's a good voice.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and so moody, and so that whole scene works really well. Like you said, that scene, the turn it off, and going through the tree, through the
And
woods,
then
through the
also the
window.
scene with the clock that he shoots through the clock
Oh yeah,
and the clock
with Ellen.
freezes.
Yep, that's a good shot. The one where they're well, it's a fake jump scare to begin with. They suddenly cut in the blender with the red stuff is going, which is
Mm-hmm.
almost a jump scare. And then Ash does the toast, and it's the shot of Shelley, but we can see the trap door in the other room. And right when something happens, it goes boom and opens up and slams open.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good scare. I
In the
like that one.
background, yeah.
Yeah. I like, well, his timing and pacing the whole way. He gives you breathers, but even the breathers are uncomfortable. Like
Mm-hmm.
he has this big, huge thing with Cheryl is still in the cellar. Linda's been stabbed. Anyway, there's this big, huge, we just chopped her up kind of thing. We got a barrier, blah, blah, blah. It cuts to outside, and he does that fake shot with the moon being covered in fog or whatever, as you're seeing the
Yeah, the
cabin.
gigantic moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it suddenly cuts to the back bedroom, and Ash just walks in and kisses Linda and then leaves. It's just a nice little breath. And then, boom, we're right back into, let's bury your
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, I love the opening after the car stuff when they're pulling into. I love the shot of them pulling into the driveway that I was familiar with and going down to the cabin
Uh-huh.
and getting out, and then Scotty walking to the door and that swing bouncing off,
Perfect.
just
Yep.
banging up against and that kind of echoes that clock scene
Mm-hmm.
because it stops too.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great shot. And that's great audio,
Hmm.
too. I love that thump that it does and everything else. Because they built that, too. The trellis in the front, the porch, and the swing were all built by them, too. The tree rape, of course, is so iconic, I guess.
I read where he feels like he went too far with that.
Well, maybe that last shook limb kind of thing, but up until that point, it was
This
pretty.
is the last limb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on my last limb.
I, I'm, I mean, at the time, it's ferocious. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons why Stephen King noticed it probably too, because it is brutal.
Right.
And he says in retrospect he kind of regrets it, but I don't know if I believe him. I know Ellen didn't like it, and she said it wasn't that bad when they shot it. She didn't realize it was going to end up being like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, another one I like is the key would be Hitchcock, but the whole timing right after that, where Cheryl is running to the door and then trying to get it unlocked, and you're doing that shaky cam of the demon coming up towards her, and she's trying to get the key and trying to get it unlocked, and all that suspense. I mean, that's great. That whole sequence is
Hmm.
good. I like the camera work where Scotty looks out the window and the camera goes from side to side depending on what he's watching or which direction he's looking. Do you remember that?
Hmm.
He does a couple of those really cool kind of tracking shots at the beginning, like going from one window to the next window to the next window and showing
Yeah, he
people.
goes almost completely around the house. Like you
Yeah.
see Scotty and Shelley undressing. You see, I think, Cheryl still sketching or something. And I think you see Bruce and Linda as well.
Yeah. I think it
And
starts
it's
with
all
Bruce
from
and
the
Linda.
outside.
Starts with Bruce and Linda because they kiss, and it's that front porch shot, and then it goes around the side, and it looks in the side window, and they're putting wood in the fireplace and snuggling kind of thing. And then it goes to
Hmm.
the first bedroom, and you've got the Scotty and his girl, and she takes her top off. Oh, gratuitous, but
Hmm.
fine. And then Cheryl is like sketching, and that's when oh wait, that is right, because that's when she gets up and goes to the other door, and suddenly it goes around to her opening the door, and that's when she goes into the woods, which is
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, you're right.
And I have that question of, all right, you're wearing a bathrobe, and you've just been terrified and scared, and supposedly you're resting and relaxing because you've written with demon writing and you've I mean, why wouldn't you? Why would you go into the woods and wander?
Hmm.
I mean, not just a couple of feet. You like go half a mile into the woods, going, "Who's there? I
Hmm.
know you're there." That just didn't make any
Yeah.
sense at all. But it was scary, you know.
The minute she goes outside, I was asking that question. I'm like, "You're in a bathrobe. It's pretty cold. Why are
Yeah,
you going outside?"
it's movie logic. You know, it just made no
Yeah.
sense at all.
Join us. Join us.
But that shot was great. And then again, like you said, all the chase in the woods, the timing, the sound effects, showing the tree limbs in the front. It's like it's pushing them down. And that was just literally
It's
people
very
holding them up.
here's another key for you, but it's very King Kong-ish, the way those trees are falling
Yes.
like
Good
some
one.
big monsters coming,
Yes. That's a very
Yeah.
good one. The scene right before that is Ash doing the Prince Charming stuff of giving her I want to give you a baby magnifying glass. Anyway,
Yeah, it's so
but
stupid.
yeah, but I mean, I
I'm like, that's the
understand.
dumbest gift.
It shows. I mean, Bruce was really good in it as far as showing the charm and what he can do, you know, and all that. But I remember thinking, okay, this thing is so low budget. They literally painted on the box. They couldn't even get a printed box to give her the gift in. They painted little hearts on it, you know. And then the gift itself, you go, really? And when she goes, "Oh, Ash, I'll wear it always," you're like, why? It's not. It looks like you could get it in a Cracker Jack box, you know.
I know. Really, it's like, really?
Yeah,
Or either that or she's the best actress in the world because she hates it. And she's
yeah.
just telling him she likes it.
So go in the back to Ellen going, look what that bastard gave me. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, look at this cheap piece of shit.
So the card scene, yeah, I've got that one in my list too. I really like it. Pushing the top,
Yeah.
like biting her own hand off
That's
was,
awesome, man. I love when she chews her hand off.
yeah, that's
That's
like,
great.
oh my God, that talk
And,
about
and you
killing
know,
it.
we talk about it being, a paradigm in the halls of horror or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's so low budget and it's so cheesy and there's so many goofs in it. But I think the reason it perseveres and is so strong to this day is a lot to do with Sam's camera work.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there are just iconic things in it. I mean, there are iconic things in Spielberg movies. But that scene where she flies up and is floating in front of the window, I mean, that to me is an iconic scene.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I mean, they could show that at the Oscars for all I care, when they're showing a horror movie segment. I mean, it belongs there.
Well, her
I
in the
don't care if
cellar
it was.
banging it open and closed and hanging onto the chains.
Hmm.
That's
With all that blood coming out of her mouth. Yeah, 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 and the sclerotic contact lenses. Exactly.
the chase through the front door all the way to the back door and right up to Bruce's eyes. You know,
Hmm.
that's very it's such a great, and the way the lighting
And
is just streaking across his
that was
eyes.
you and Wendell too, wasn't it?
Yeah, that one.
Wasn't it you and Wendell?
Mostly anytime you have Bruce by himself was shots that we did. No matter where it is in the
Okay.
movie, but Bruce by himself, we shot a lot of that. You know, that last shot, which I've heard everything from Sam was on a bicycle, Sam drove a motorcycle through the house, Sam, whatever. No, Sam was holding the shaky cam and he was holding the small one, so it was only like the 2 foot, and he's focused in. And I remember we had to, because the first door was Wynn, the second door was me, and the third door was Josh and Rob. And we had taken a circular saw and cut through the door so that we could pull it into two pieces, and then right up to Bruce. And all that had to be timed so that Bruce wasn't already at the car by the time Sam got there. So he had to time it. We had to do it, most of the day to do it. Because that was literally the last thing we shot. That was the last thing shot for Evil Dead, was the last shot. And I remember when we first did it, Sam didn't like it a couple of times. So Wynn actually had to go up there, and Sam would hold. He's kneeling down, and he's holding this camera, which is pretty heavy, and he's holding it by these two ends of this board. And Wynn is having to focus the focus lens on the leaf because Sam doesn't have three hands, so he can't do it. And we literally have nobody else there. So he would start rolling. Wynn would get the focus right. Then Wynn would run, and get behind the first door, so that Sam could then, and then he would say, "I'm ready," and then Sam would go, "Okay," and then Sam would run, and he would go, "All right, door number 1, go! Door number 2, go!" Door number 3, and door number 3 one time didn't work, and he literally just went, kaboom. It was like a Star Trek move, just right into the door. And I remember it was either Josh or Rob or one of them said, "Sorry, we didn't hear you. Sorry." Because, I mean, we were tired.
I have a feeling that was intentional.
We were tired, too. But and there was one where he went through all 3, but Bruce was, like, leaning against the car just looking at him because he had already been there for, like, 30 seconds or so and didn't want to just act like he was fake walking. So, I mean, but that was an iconic shot, I think, too. And a great way to end it. That whole thing of, you think he's going to win, the sun's up, oh, it's all pretty. No, didn't. The demon wins, kind of thing.
Yay.
Yeah. I will always, I think, be haunted by, "We're gonna get you. We're gonna." Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too because it's so annoying but so effective at the same time.
Yeah.
We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you. Not another peep. Kinda gonna be.
Yeah. His tracking shots, even that one, after they kill, I think it's Linda. After they kill her and he has to drag her body, and it's like the camera's on the ground.
And you see Cheryl in the background.
Yeah. And it's doing that
I love
big,
that shot.
That's a great shot.
It's an awesome shot because it's a great reveal at the end of her just looking through that cellar door as he drags the body off. I love that shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, there are goofs in it. There's all kinds of continuity errors all the way through because it was filmed over in such weird conditions here in Morristown, but then also once they go back to Michigan and trying to reshoot stuff and fix stuff and doing the stop animation.
You can see Rob standing on the side of the bridge when they're driving over it. He's like over to the right.
Yep.
And I read that Sam had him digitally taken out of the Blu-ray.
Oh, really?
He's on my DVD. Yeah, he's on my DVD. You can see him.
Well, and the cameo at the beginning of Sam and Rob. They're the two fishermen.
Right.
But other continuity stuff, like you can tell every time they cut to the low angles of the staircase, like when Bruce is walking up the stairs, or it's shooting up the stairs with Bruce, on the stairs and shooting in the background, you can tell that's not the same place. The wall is different color, the ceiling is different. That big tracking shot when he comes out, you can see that it's like a little tunnel-y kind of staircase. It's not, you're not going up into the cabin. So.
Yeah, and when you were talking about how the basement goes on and on forever before Scotty jumps out.
Oh my gosh.
That last room where the Hills Have Eyes poster is torn and up on the wall, I read that was Sam's garage.
Yes.
That room was.
That room. And the rest of it was Rob Tappert's parents' house. They had the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember watching it with you once when Bruce is taking Cheryl away in the car before the bridge, before they realize the bridge is gone. They're basically parked in a garage, and somebody's just kind of rocking that car.
Yeah.
It's not even moving.
No, we put plastic
up. I mean, it's
up.
moving, but it's not rolling.
We put plastic up in the basement of the house that they had rented. And that's where we shot the night stuff. And, even throwing leaves on the hood of the car. But what's really cool about it is the shot where, she says they're not going to let us leave, and he finally starts the car. And then he kind of gives her that look like, okay. And then does the
Yeah.
typical thing you do where you put your arm over the back seat and you look back behind you to turn, to go backwards, to go in reverse. And, the car backs up. The car isn't backing up. Sam actually moved the camera to the hood. So it looked like the car was backing up, but it wasn't. And
Oh,
every time
okay.
I see that, I go, that looks really real. I believe that car is moving.
Yeah.
We had audio trouble because those foggers, and I think you can probably hear them. I remember you can hear them in some of the outtakes. But those foggers are freaking loud.
You can.
They were
It's
like,
just like the fog we used to use in storage.
yeah, they were loud.
I mean, the first time I think I ever came into contact with one was maybe when we did The Wizard of Oz and the witch had to melt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, how do you keep the audience from hearing that when
Yeah.
the smoke's coming out?
Yeah.
And then you and I mean, we had them in Macbeth and other shows we did as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got better as time progressed, but at first they were really loud.
Yeah, it was almost like an air compressor kind of sound to
And
it.
I saw on some of the outtakes they had people actually smoking cigarettes and blowing smoke into people's hair and stuff.
Oh,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, on the out. I was like, that's not going to last. Yeah.
Ellen, I think I've read somewhere where Ellen really hated the fact that, they would come right up to her and blow fog just right into her hair. So it looks like her hair's on fire because supposedly she fell in, well, not her, Shelley, one of them. Anyway, whichever one fell into the
Right.
fireplace. But to
Right.
make it look like her hair was still smoking, they would hit it with foggers.
hmm
Of taking tracking shots because, there's just it's such a creepy feel all the way through that movie. He sets it up. Well, even from the very beginning, I like the fact that the very first thing you hear on the soundtrack are flies buzzing. And then it goes into that kind of creepy music, and it comes from the white into the swamp.
Yeah, the music's great. Some of it sounds canned, but most of it's great.
Yeah, agreed. And, I've gotten people for years and years with, recognize this theme song and play the one for Evil Dead and people who don't know it. Because, it's only used a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's like almost a love theme kind of thing in the movie. Because he uses that Three Stooges crap for the credits.
Well, and he uses a lot of crazy sound effects like The Exorcist did too.
Yes,
With
that is
like
true.
when the force is in the woods and it's going, outside
Yep.
the window and stuff. And I think I read a lot of that's him just distorting his voice.
Right. And I noticed one too. There's a shot later on when it's Bruce by himself, and he's, I think, going from like window to window, and the camera is like directly above him. And they shot it, just tracking along, following Bruce, on the ceiling that they had taken out. But every time it goes in front, one of the rafters goes in front of the
Yes.
camera, you hear that. Shoo, 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 shoo.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to add that, but adding it made it really creepy. So
Yeah,
it
it was
worked.
very cool.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
before we jump to keys per se, we should probably talk a little bit about, for people, just about the movie itself. So the movie, we said, became very, very popular. They filmed it here. They had to go back. They had to do more reshoots in Michigan. It took them 2 years almost, I guess, to get it finished, edited, and get it distributed.
I just remember I didn't think I was ever going to get to see it.
It got distributed mostly, it got popular because of Stephen King, right?
Yeah, his quote was the most ferociously original horror film of the year or something.
Right. And they asked him
And,
if they could
and
have it, and they used it on every freaking thing. that
on
they could.
all their posters. I
Yeah.
mean, and it skyrocketed. I mean, the power of Stephen King skyrocketed that movie.
Yeah. Well, and I've got a memory thing right before that. I remember, because like I said, we would, if we were either prepping makeup or waiting for them to eat or going back in between takes or whatever, we would do some other stuff. So there were times when we were at the house and we would watch dailies and outtakes. We also got to show Sam and Rob and Bruce our old short films that we had done. And he had brought some of his, like they had Within the Woods. So I got to see Within the Woods and Happy Valley Kid. There was another one. The one I liked most, I remember, was called Clockwork. and it was a slasher film, basically, that Sam had done. But you could see all of this just incredibly good camera work in it. And I was going, this is really genuinely scary. I can only imagine what this movie's going to be like. But the movie became successful. It, like you said, it did have a controversy with Video Nasties, but then it just became huge. Sam, I mean, all of them went on to stuff. You know,
Well, I
Sam.
mean, he's obviously the most famous, but Bruce is pretty famous too. And Ellen works. I mean, I was looking at him on IMDb. All the women work.
Yeah.
They're still actresses.
Well, but like Sam and Rob went on to do Hercules and Xena and all of that. I mean, Rob even ended up marrying Xena. So there's
Hmm.
that. You know, Bruce went on to do like Briscoe County and Burn Notice, and then Ash, of course. He's on the conventions. He's got what? How many books? 2 books or something like that. Um,
Yeah, and he does movies too. I mean, he was in Bubba Hotep.
yeah, oh, I love that movie.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
We,
that's a fucking great movie.
that is a
Excuse
good
my
movie.
French.
Yeah.
I love Joe Lansdale.
Hmm. Well, and one of your guys too like this. Joe Bob Briggs really liked Evil Dead too, right? I mean, he was one of the big.
Hmm.
He purported or pushed it a lot, I think. And it spawned, like we said, the kind of pseudo remake sequel, and then the action adventure Army of Darkness, Give Me Some Sugar Baby or whatever, and then Ash
Right.
versus Evil Dead. You know, an entire series. Or, how many? 3
3 seasons. I
seasons.
think it's been canceled, but 3 seasons. Yeah, I've seen the first two.
Yeah. So it became, it did very well for them. It's, and it's a great personal story for us just because we were both there when it was filmed, but also I think
Hmm.
personal story for them because, and for anybody, it shows that if you have the passion, you want it and stick with it, every now and then you get lucky it'll work. You can make it happen and become successful, following your dream kind of thing. Uh, I,
Right.
I remember at one point Rob had said, because Rob was Sam was the creative thrust. Rob has been actually the producer. Rob's been mostly they were a great triumvirate. Bruce, the actor, Sam, the writer, director, and Rob, the financier, producer. So it was a great for all three of them. But I remember him saying that he and Sam really ended up picking a horror movie to do first, even though they had just done a lot of comedies and dramas and stuff like that as short films, because they were the easiest to get distributed and the most profitable for low budgets.
Hmm.
So made perfect sense and
Right.
obviously worked for them.
Well, I mean, it was a freakishly successful for a low budget indie, but by that success, people saw the talent, obviously that Sam had as far as camera work.
Hmm.
Because I mean, he's been working ever since, and now he does big budget stuff. I mean,
Oh
he
yeah.
did the first three Spider-Man movies.
Yep.
And he, you know what? He's done a lot more that I just am not thinking of. Didn't he do that Simple Plan movie?
Yeah. Love that movie.
That was a great movie.
Yeah. And there's no genre piece in that. It's just a nice, good movie, you know?
It's written by Scott Smith, the guy that wrote The Ruins. I've read the book.
Oh, okay.
Imagine that.
Obviously.
Yeah. So, but I'm pretty sure he directed that, and he did Darkman back in the '80s.
Yeah, Darkman was actually first before Spider-Man or any of that. That's what I think he used the clout from
Hmm.
Army of Darkness to do, was Darkman. His brother, Ted's gone on to do a bunch of stuff, writing and producing
Hmm.
wise in the back. He's been
Well,
very
and
successful.
if you should watch Ash versus the Evil Dead when you get a chance because you'll see a lot of these guys in there. His brothers are in there. I think Rob's in there. That guy that plays Scotty is definitely in there.
Really? Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I think he just did like one episode,
Hmm.
but yeah, he's there. And is Rob still married to Lucy Lawless? Because she's still, I mean, she's like a cult figure in herself with Xena,
Oh, yeah.
Princess Warrior.
And she
It's
had a
crazy.
really great part in that Battlestar Galactica revival. She was great in
Right.
that.
And you had mentioned to me before we started recording that we ought to do a convention next year or later this year.
Yeah.
And I think Lucy still does those. I'm pretty sure she does.
Yeah, and I know the girls still, I mean, the ladies of Evil Dead still do too. And Bruce, of
Hmm.
course.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we might want to find one where they're at and just go and sign our foreheads or something or whatever.
We're from Morristown. It's funny though when they do mention Morristown on
It's
some of those
still odd to
documentaries
me.
and
It is
stuff.
still odd to
Yeah,
me every time I hear it.
yeah.
And the fact that Morristown hasn't celebrated that more, in some way. Why don't we have the Evil Dead Memorial Park or
Well,
Evil
they were
Dead?
really big on it until they saw it. And they're like, "Ooh, I don't want to be associated with that movie."
The Evil Dead, haunted parade or something we should do or whatever.
Yeah,
But Key, so
yeah. I've got a few.
it's influenced a bunch. The three first ones, well, let's do three at a time. So the three first one I have is, of course, Cabin Fever, because Cabin Fever feels like we're watching Evil Dead only with, instead of demons, it's flesh-eating
Eh,
disease or whatever.
Well, and Eli Roth was on one of the documentaries I saw, and he explicitly said, "I'm going to go out and make my own Evil Dead."
Well, he can't
So,
because
I
he's
mean,
Eli Roth and he sucks. But
he'd rather do torture porn,
that's right. Cabin in the Woods by my favorite, Joss Whedon,
right?
is very has lots of homages to Evil Dead, and of course the sequels, the Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, Ash versus all of those. So that's my first three.
Okay. Well, I will take it back a notch
Mm,
and mention H.P. Lovecraft, which is where they were inspired to
excellent.
create the Necronomicon.
Yeah.
That I can't remember what work that first appeared in. I think it was The Hound, but it was written by the mad Arab Azul al-Zared or something.
Abdul Al-Hazrad. Yeah.
Al-Hazrad, that's it.
Yeah.
Whatever he said. Anyway, that's a big key right there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was reading some Lovecraft before they made that movie.
Oh yeah, that's a
And
big one.
and then I've mentioned numerous times the Hills Have Eyes poster in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that's kind of an in joke, and I think Wes Craven may have put a torn Evil Dead poster in the Hills Have Eyes sequel.
Yeah, because in the original Hills Have Eyes, the poster's Jaws is in the
It's
background.
Jaws. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a running joke amongst the directors or something,
Yeah.
which I found kind of cool.
Yep.
It's almost like a literal key. And then I mentioned the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well. The shed where the chainsaw takes place.
Oh,
It's got
definitely.
like bones and things hanging from the ceiling. And of
Mm-hmm.
course there is a chainsaw in that scene as well. So
Yes, yes. And later on,
in that shed.
that editing, all that editing that I think he does when Bruce is getting ready to chop Linda up is very chainsaw. All those fast cuts and the chainsaw all of a sudden starting, and then close up of
And
his
it's like
eyes.
twice as loud as it should be.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's like "Brrr," right in your ear. And another thing, just to give a little credence to Hills Have Eyes and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is Sam even says in interviews that he was out to capture the kind of feel that Tobe Hooper and Wes Craven were already doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was unapologetically a horror movie.
Yeah, and
So,
did it.
all right,
Okay,
you go.
I've got two Hitchcocks. One I already mentioned, which was the Coming Up on Cheryl is a very Hitchcock sort of the way it's intercut with the woods and the demon and her and the keys, and then the whole
Hmm.
ending with Ash grabbing her hand and all that, and then the
Yeah.
door slinking back from the door. That was really good. That's Hitchcock. Also, of course, putting yourself in a cameo in the movie, so that's Sam and Rob in that one. Several times, I mean, there's Three Stooges all the way through there in different places with Bruce, but even using the term fake Shemp is a very Three Stooges key.
Right.
The opening scene reminds me of Duel, the way it's shot. The car, once the truck enters it, not when
With
she's
the
singing,
truck,
but
yeah,
with the
the
truck,
angles,
the
yeah.
angles and the intercut and the wheel spinning and all that's very, Spielberg's Duel kind of thing.
I was going to say, actually, this probably preceded it, but in the Amityville Horror, I know the novel preceded it. The walls bled, and in
Mm,
this cabin, you've got blood coming out of the sockets and out of the light bulbs and stuff, and that was very Amityville
very good.
esque
Yep.
to me. You cannot see Shelley laying on the floor with her hand chopped off, spewing milk without thinking of Alien.
Yep,
It is
I
just the
had that one.
whole
That was a
be at
good one.
home
Yep.
android alien spewing white spewing
Mm-hmm.
alien. I mean android. My last one, you're gonna like this because this is kind of a secret key. I don't know if you've noticed, but on a lot of my either blogs or website copy that I have written, I end it with the words "join us."
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I do that, it is because I hear the voice in my head from that movie saying, "Join us." So, for all you people out there listening, now you know when you read the words "join us," it's my little homage to this movie.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's good. That's a good one.
Hmm.
Okay, I have just a few last ones. So I have parts of the shaky cam, especially with the woods and the wood chase and everything else, and also the Cheryl laying down and we're literally looking up her nose holes reminds me of Blair Witch. All the
Hmm.
kind of handheld in the in the woods and then up her nose.
Yeah, but it's not annoying.
Right.
In Amityville, I mean in Blair Witch, it's annoying. It
Yeah.
drives me crazy.
Two keys that are kind of like in jokey kind of keys, like you mentioned with the poster. One is the car. That was Sam's car, the
Yeah,
73 Olds, and it's in every one of his movies. So that car, he's managed to get into every movie he's done, even Army of Darkness, which was set in medieval Spain or whatever.
yeah, that's hilarious.
The Tamaqua shirt that you see in the closet is that was a
It's his
summer camp.
camp.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
Sam went to. And
yeah, I remember reading that.
kind of an anti-key, I guess. It's something that he's set that kind of went against the norm, and a lot of people haven't done it since. Was the women aren't the ones being terrorized in this. The men are. The women actually terrorize the men in this. And the horror
Yeah, I
convention
like
is the
that.
exact opposite. You always have the poor lone, what they call it, the last girl or whatever kind of thing.
Right, and
Ash is like the last boy.
yeah, it is. It's like an anti-horror key. And if I'm not mistaken, I meant to bring this up earlier. You said you saw Within the Woods. Aren't the roles reversed in that?
Yes,
Isn't Ash the demon and Cheryl's not?
correct. Cheryl is the young girl, innocent, being stalked by Ash, who's possessed by a demon in the
Yeah.
in Within the Woods. And the last one I have is, and I'm surprised you didn't get it, but in Nightmare on Elm Street, they're watching The Evil Dead.
Oh yeah, yeah, they are.
Yep, yep.
Yep, it's on the TV.
It is on the TV, so that's the one I had. Just
So
like
maybe
in
that's another little homage Wes Craven was throwing at him too.
could have been well, like in
Yeah,
Halloween. In Halloween, what is she in? She watching The Thing
the
in
thing.
Halloween. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think we mentioned that in an earlier
it's
podcast, but yeah. Again, we have selected a film that both of us love, adore, and we think influenced us a lot personally and pseudo professionally. That has definitely been a huge key in the industry, I think, and against all odds. I mean, there were several low budget horror movies that were made in the 70s and the 80s.
especially in the early '80s. Yeah,
Yeah, but I don't think any had the impact that this one had because I don't think they had the creativity that literally Sam had. So there's that. Um,
so there you go.
we give it a thumbs up or a chew your own wrist off.
I
It's so
actually give
good.
it two dismembered thumbs up.
Two dismembered thumbs up. Yeah.
Hmm.
Trying to look and see if I had any last minute notes, but I think we covered basically everything. We did.
I just I have well, I'm at a loss for words. No, I'm a horror guy. I've been watching horror movies my whole life, and I said this movie's part of my DNA, and I just want you people to know out there that, I said when you see Join Us, that I really mean that. That's what's going through my head. And a lot of times, if you see me acting kind of crazy, it's probably because I have lines from this movie going through my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've kicked myself
That
in
or
the
another
head
movie.
several times because I kept a script that Sam had drawn on and done some really crude storyboards and was covered in Cairo and everything else. I kept it for years and years and then lost it, and I don't know
Oh, great.
where it went. And I
It's in your house somewhere.
to this day say, I really wish I'd kept that Kandarian dagger because it's one of my favorite props ever. I just think,
Yeah.
hey, there's a key. It looks very H.R. Giger, very alien in the design
It
of that dagger.
was.
Yeah.
And it looked like it had a little model skull in it or something.
Yeah, the front of it's a little bitty
Yeah.
skull. Yeah.
And
So
if you had it, you could rehearse turning it around in your hand so that somebody could stab you from
in
behind.
the back, yes, perfectly.
It's so dumb. She like licks it, and then you see her just do this elaborate turn in her hand so that
And the
her
way
arm
she
can be
grabs
bent
it
back in
is
order.
the blade too. It's not the handle
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
like,
knife. It makes no
mhm.
sense other than why
No,
are
it
you
makes
doing
no sense.
that?
But I still love it.
We do. That's one of
Yep.
those that, yeah, it defies all movie logic, but we like it, sort of thing.
Like Basket Case.
Yeah. See, yeah, I haven't watched that in a long time. I should watch
I
that.
watched Joe Bob Briggs host that the other night, and I think I'm going to write a blog about it because I still love that film. But it's out there.
It is definitely out there. Way.
And instead of filmed in a cabin, it's filmed in a cheap hotel with a bunch of hookers.
I heard one that reminded me of you the other day. Somebody was talking, and they suddenly said Frankenhooker, and I'd forgotten
Yeah,
all
that's
about
the
that
same
movie.
guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's Frank Henlotter. Same director.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of, there were plenty of cheap horror movies made around this time, but they didn't have the effect
Yes.
of Evil
Yes.
Dead.
Well, and you know what? I was reading in I guess it may have been my Evil Dead research that there were several movies at this time that used some crude stop animation. And one of them was The Evil Dead and the other was Basket Case.
That makes sense.
I don't know why. I guess because it was cheap. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, but I love, we didn't mention it, but I really love the stop animation. Not necessarily on the decomposing at the end, but I really like it on Linda's leg. The black veins going. That's really
Hmm.
creepy. That looks really
It looks
creepy.
like it's hand drawn. Yeah.
It was. He did that frame
Hmm.
by frame on her laying there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing Evil Dead with me, Tim, and thank you, gentle listeners, for listening to us as we talk. We'll.
Oh, great show.
Yep. Cool. We'll talk to you soon.